direction.
No, I mean, you can see what happened in Greece. I mean, we were discussing in the pre-interview how they took Tsipras into a room. Mm-hmm. He didn't come out until basically he kneeled and bowed to the central bankers and did what they wanted, and he brought back this deal which was kind of rewritten to what they wanted, and he went against what the people wanted. And
yeah.
We see this all over the planet now. I mean, it's the same thing. The central bankers are definitely calling the shots.
Yeah, they are. And, Varoufakis has called this a coup. Others have called it a coup. That's exactly what it is. They locked Tsipras in a room. I don't know if he was in on this thing from the beginning or not, but I think when the banksters, these people are really, really, really bad people, as the listeners know. I mean, the worst of the worst. These are the people that want to enslave humanity. And I think when you get locked in a room with these people, there is no measure they are not willing to take. There is no threat they're not willing to yield. And who knows what they said to Tsipras behind closed doors. But when he came out, he was a defeated man. And again, I don't know if that was the plan going in. Was he in on the whole thing from the beginning? Did he sell out his people reluctantly or willingly? We don't know. But the fact is, the people of Greece have been sold out, and that's what humanity is up against. These banksters want to buy off and pay off the politicians, and these politicians, many of whom in our own country are in on it, are willingly selling us out. And that's what we're up against. That's why it's humanity versus the banksters. And this multifaceted attack is really something I want to talk about today, because they're hitting us from so many different vector points. It's really, really going to be hard for us to fight back and retain our sovereignty.
I mean, you really see it, because if you notice, just in the last couple of weeks, they've been on like an overdrive right now with, hitting the people's rights, taking the choices away from people. I mean, you look in California and you see all types of things, all different types of laws coming out, and it seems like it's kind of a test bed out there to see, let's see if people go along with this. And look, they are going along with it. So, you know what? We'll just keep going and we'll force it on them and take away their choices. And we mentioned this before about vaccines, and people have been talking about, mandatory vaccines. And we can see already with laws coming out like SB 277, where they're really pushing, you have to do what we say, and you have you can't question it.
Right. I've been covering that in detail, Dave. This SB 277 mandatory vaccines bill that Jerry Brown has signed is absolutely the epitome of fascist tyranny at home. To me, it's really worse than the whole Jade Helm thing. It's at least as bad, because now they put their tyranny into the form of law. And I've been following that very, very closely, because there is a correlation. It is documented. There's a correlation between a lot of ailments and vaccines. Autism probably leading the list. It's the thimerosal, it's the mercury preservative in these vaccines, and other things that they put in there, like formaldehyde and all sorts of infant fetus DNA. There's all sorts of bad stuff in these vaccines. And now this medical industrial complex, working in concert with these criminals in California, want to make sure that your kid gets the vaccine, whether or not you want your kid to get the vaccine. And they are even saying that even if your kid goes to a private school, you have to get the vaccines or he can't go to school. It's absolute tyranny. And the reason it's tyranny is because, Dave, I'm sure you were following this as we were. The people were standing up in droves by the tens of thousands and showing up at the California State Capitol to say, hell no, you are not going to jam this bill down our throats. You are not going to vaccinate our children against our will. You are not going to have a state-sponsored needle put into the bloodstream of our children, because that is the very epitome of state tyranny, and we won't stand for it. And if you look at the videos, thousands and thousands of people showing up to be active, to practice democracy, right? To have their voices heard at the state capitol in California. And these criminals said, we don't care. We're doing it anyway. Just like the banksters did to the people of Greece. This is what we're up against, a multifaceted attack. And, that's just the tip of the iceberg, because California, as you say, I think is a test case. If they can bring 45 million people to their knees in California, Dave, they can bring the whole nation, the whole United States, the people of this country to our knees. And what are they doing in California? What do we need to be watching? We need to be looking so closely at this engineered drought and the Agenda 21 policies that are being rolled out in earnest on the back and on the excuse of this engineered drought. It's completely terrifying, because if they destroy the breadbasket of our nation, which is really agriculture in California, by way of this engineered drought, and why do I say engineered? We can talk about that in detail. They will bring this entire nation to its knees. And that's why I say we're under a multifaceted, multi-directional attack by these satanic, Luciferian, communist banksters, right? This organized plot, this New World Order plot, call it what you want, this Trotskyesque plot to bring us to our knees is well underway, and I'm not sure how we're going to fight back against it, because, like I said, we're being bum rushed. It's like those riots in Baltimore where you saw these crowds go into a store and a helpless store owner just had to stand back and let a store be looted. That's what's happening to us, Dave, because we're being hit from every single different multiple vector points. And how are we to stand up and fight back when, even when we do show up to fight back against one vector point, which is SB 277, they ram it through anyway?
Sean, let me ask you a question, and let me see if you agree with this. Now, they're telling us that, I mean, in California, pretty much the rest of the country, they're telling us that everyone needs to be vaccinated, you know, to protect our children, to protect everyone. But those people who want to get vaccinated, aren't they protected?
Yeah.
Aren't they protected? I mean, let's say we're in school. I mean, the kids are in school, and these certain group of kids get vaccinated, and then there's another group that doesn't get vaccinated. Aren't the people who are pushing for vaccines, who got the vaccine, aren't they protected? So why do they care if the others do not get vaccinated?
Yeah. Well, look, here's the thing about vaccines, and here's the thing about the propaganda being used against the people to push SB 277 through. And it really didn't work. It wasn't working, as we see. The most active people, it's like the Ron Paul campaign when he was running. The media just ignored him, despite the fact that he got more donations from active military, U.S. military men and women, than any other candidate. In fact, he got more donations than all of the other Republican candidates combined. They ignored him. He was the front runner. He had the grassroots support. It's the same thing with SB 277. The grassroots support was against it, and they used that measles outbreak at Disneyland as their reason for why they need to do this, to quote-unquote protect the children. Well, guess what? I think half of the people that came down with the measles at Disneyland weren't vaccinated, and half were. So it's an equal opportunity disease, right? It doesn't matter. These vaccines don't work. And more to the point, some of these vaccines are so incredibly dangerous, like the HPV vaccine from Merck, that, it'll kill people, it can hurt people, it can maim people, it can cripple young girls. And what do? They say, oh, you need to take the HPV vaccine, give it to your daughter out of love so that she never gets this horrible cancer. And they want to give it to these 10 and 11-year-old, 9-year-old, 8-year-old girls who aren't even sexually active. Well, how do you get HPV? You have to be sexually active. But they want to get their 3 rounds of shots in, and then if you go to YouTube and you watch the videos about all the girls who have been maimed, hurt, or killed by the HPV vaccine, explain that to the parents, in hindsight. You shouldn't have given your daughter this vaccine, which purportedly only protects against, I think, 3 variations of over 128 different variations of HPV. These drug companies don't care about you or me or our children, Dave, and you know that as well as I do, and so do those crowds that showed up to say hell no to SB 277.
Yeah, I think some of the statistics in the last 10 years, the number of cases of people that died from the measles, who had the measles, is 0, and those people who received the measles vaccine, I think over the last 10 years, 150 people died just from the vaccine itself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you look at this, you see okay, they took the vaccine, they died, they got the measles, and measles has been around for a very long time. I mean, when I was growing up, my parents, my grandparents, they had the measles. Mm-hmm. I mean, actually, it was like a rite of passage. You get the measles, just like the chicken pox.
Yeah, I had chicken pox when I was a kid.
So did I.
It for a couple of days, and you get over it.
Right.
And then you have a natural immunity to it.
Right.
But here's the point that needs to be made about SB 277. Right, and it gets back to what you said about California being really a test case, right, for the rest of the country. If they can roll out this tyranny and they get away with it, then what happens when the next biological attack occurs? What happens when they come to the rest of us in this country and say, okay, well, now we're going to sign an executive order, and everybody in the country needs to show up at, the local gymnasium at the school to get their mandatory shot from the magic government that's going to protect you against the magic disease. Well, who knows what's in that? Nanotech? Who knows what's in that? We trust these people? We don't trust these people. They're known, repeated liars. So why would we want to give up our ultimate freedom, our personal sovereignty, the control over our own human God-given body? Why would we want to do that? We don't. but they want to take that right away from us. And that's the ultimate tyranny. I've said a couple of times now that these people, these fascists in California, are going to spark a revolution because they're pushing so hard. And I don't think there's a better example of it than SB 277. The people said no. The government said, screw you. We're doing it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you really look, it's basically taking and removing the right of the people to make a choice for themselves.
Yeah.
And that is the foundation of the founding fathers when they put together everything and told us that we were born with inalienable rights and we have the right to choose, we have the right to free expression, we have the right, all the different rights that we have. And we can see that each time these central bankers, these elites, they continually come out and they chip away at each one of these. And we see across the country where people are being searched without any type of warrant. We see that in certain colleges and certain protest areas, they have the little fenced-in areas, and they say, oh, you can practice free speech in there, but everywhere else you can't practice free speech. And especially with the gun rights, I mean, you see they're just continually coming out with, thousands upon thousands of laws trying to infringe on that. But this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to remove the rights. And what's interesting about this is I use Ukraine as a perfect example, and not just Ukraine, but the Middle East. When the central bankers take over a country and they install a puppet government, if you notice, the people of the country no longer have the rights. The people there are called terrorists. The people there, are their enemy. And we see this happening in this country because their master plan, and I completely believe this, is to remove the rights of the people, because we see in Common Core, they're bringing in texts and passages that say that rights are not, you're not born with these rights, they're privileges, and the government can take it away at any time. And they're kind of rewriting some of them. Right.
It's serfdom, right?
Yeah.
So it's neo-serfdom. It's everything we fought against when we wanted to fight against the tyranny of the king in England, when we wanted to take our own nation and keep our nation for ourselves, our Bill of Rights, our Constitution. We fought against the tyranny of the crown. And the tyranny now, and in fact, we just posted something not long ago, Dave, in which a young girl did research and tied every single American president back to each other through blood relations and ultimately back to the British crown. We've been overtaken, right? This is a war against us. I don't think that, I guess on paper we won the Revolutionary War, but behind the scenes, we didn't win. These people are very, very clever, and they are rolling out their tyranny. And again, this multifaceted attack. I took a few notes before we started speaking here. Today I want to talk about the fact that I really think we're in the twilight of humanity, right? This multifaceted attack against us, which includes economic, environmental. Look what's going on in Greece. The banksters will lock you in a room until they get their way. They'll threaten you, your family. They'll kill. The TPP having been fast-tracked in this country, despite the people saying no. It was secret. We're not sure what's in it, but we don't trust you, so no. And the criminal Congress and Senate fast-tracked it anyway. The Hampstead satanic cult, child rape, child sacrifice, pedophile ring in the UK. If you guys don't know about that, please, I beseech you, Google it, YouTube it, the Hampstead satanic child rape cult, the satanic Hampstead cult. Google that and learn about it. These people, a lot of that ties back to David Cameron in the highest levels of the royals. These people are Satanists. Am I crazy to say that? The evidence says that they are. So whether or not you believe, whether or not you're a Christian or not, you should probably be aware that a lot of the worst people on the planet embrace a very dark force that they believe gives them power, and they're rolling out this agenda, this satanic agenda to enslave us. Now, what do we do to fight against that? I don't know, it gets me back to California, because if they destroy agriculture in California, if they shut off the water, we are screwed. And this engineered drought is something we really, really need to start talking about every single day. I think the one person who's doing a better job talking about the engineered drought in California than anybody else is Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.com. He's the most articulate, most intelligent. The man could be the CEO of any company. And when he spoke, you'd say, I got to buy this stock. This guy is brilliant. And he's dedicated his life now, free of charge. He doesn't even have advertising on his great website there, geoengineeringwatch.org. I think I might have said .com. Geoengineering Watch. And this man has dedicated his life to exposing what's going on. And what is going on in California, Dave? Well, it's, again, a multifaceted, bigger picture. It's a big, giant picture that we need to look at. We need to step back, take a look at it from that 10,000-foot view. And what do we see? We see HARP. We see SBX radar on these floating platforms. We see geoengineering and what Dane calls solar management, right? Solar management, geoengineering. We see a concerted plot to turn the water off in California. And what happens when the water gets turned off in California? Well, let's hear it from Dane Wigington himself. I've got it right here. This is from a great video that everybody must watch called Engineered Drought Catastrophe, Target California. This is the great mind of Dane Wigington in his words.
This is not a joke. I mean, by the time, if this continues, if the lack of moisture over us continues, I think we all know what's coming. So at this point, no matter what we do on the ground to try to exercise our rights, if they have that kind of power over us, if they can shut off our water, if they can toxify our air and soils, it's going to be game over if it continues.
Okay, so it's going to be game over if it continues because no matter how we exercise our rights on the ground, if they have this kind of control over our environment, over our water, over our land, Agenda 21, if they have this kind of draconian, omniscient, omnipresent power, we're doomed. And Dane's just trying to sound the alarm. And you guys, prior to that part in the video there at 16, 17 minutes into the video, he's showing NOAA's maps, right? NOAA maps, governmental agency maps, showing this drought being engineered. It's quantifiable. It's statistically, you're more likely to get hit by an asteroid than for what's been going on in the environment to be happening naturally. Dane quantifies that in the presentation with this polar vortex. They are frying California. And again, the geoengineering thing isn't just about California. It's much, much, much bigger than just California. But it needs to be talked about, Dave, because honest to God, man, they're going to bring us to our knees. And once our food is gone, once the water's turned off, there will be no way to fight back against these people.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that they are doing this and creating this drought scenario to bring in, to get rid of the natural crops that grow with, with water and rich soil, to bring in GMO type of engineered crops where they don't need that much water and to try to switch us over to that? Because there has been a lot of resistance with GMOs, and I don't eat anything that's well, at least I don't think I do. I try not to whatsoever. I'm kind of a health nut. But it seems like throughout the globe with everything that's going on, vaccines, it seems like GMO, they're continually trying to push this on us and trying to convince us that, yeah, this is good for you. Eat our food, eat this, use these seeds. And it seems like maybe in California, I don't know what your opinion is, that they're trying to destroy what's there and maybe come in and say, listen, we know you had a really bad drought. We know water is not abundant here, but these seeds will grow in the desert and you'll have crops with our seeds.
Yeah, Monsanto's GMO seeds and, the Roundup Ready seeds where they put the poison into the food on a cellular level. Everybody who's informed is concerned about that. Nobody wants to eat the stuff. And, of course, the government won't allow it to be labeled because the government is fascist, right? So there's a revolving door at the FDA. So the same people that worked at Monsanto are at the FDA. And what hope do we have, right? But I think the engineered drought in California is so much bigger than just the GMO seeds. And I think you're onto something there, but I think it's much, much bigger. The Agenda 21 policy is to herd people into giant cities with little tiny living spaces, okay? So no more single family homes, no more green lawns that you get to water, no more 2 cars, they want to think Mexico City, but worse. That's what they want to do. So through this engineered drought and through turning off the water, they can start to depopulate entire urban areas. And I know that sounds crazy. Agenda 21 sounds crazy, and when we were reading the documents 10 years ago, we thought, well, there's no way people will go for this. Well, guess what? The people will have to go for it when there's an engineered drought and they have no food and water. So they can say, okay, here is the new area where you can get your food and your water, your free food and your water, which will be GMO food and probably fluoridated water, and they're going to herd us into these Orwellian cities, and then they're going to privatize all that land. They'll buy it all up, pennies on the dollar, and this is the neo-serfdom I'm talking about. This is the plan for the royals, for the Luciferians, for the people at the Vatican, for the Rothschilds, for whatever you think controls this planet. I think they're all in on it together. This is the plan for them to just own everything. It's their world. We just live in it. And what do they want to do to us? They don't give, I almost swore, they don't care about us. They want us gone. They want to depopulate us. And you know what? There are great people waking up to that fact. And I want to play this bite from a fourth-generation farmer in California. This is a great video from We Are Change and the elite's plan for a California drought talked about by a fourth-generation farmer who speaks out. Can I play this for you, Dave? It's probably going to be close to 45 seconds a minute, but I think it's very important.
Go right ahead.
Okay, let me play this for you guys, and I just want to preface it by saying, if anything I just said people think is crazy, guess what? There's people who haven't studied these issues as much as me who are waking up, like this very courageous, very brave fourth-generation California farmer. Listen to this.
If there were to be an agricultural collapse in California, what would that look like?
Well, we see plenty of movies, don't we, where there isn't any food and stuff. Well, I don't even want to think of that. Surely we're smarter than that, Kayla. Surely we can come together and solve these things. I know there are people, elitists, that think there's too many people on the planet, so some should just die. There's elitists that think we shouldn't be farming. We shouldn't be using irrigation in the San Joaquin Valley, that everything should go back to how it used to be. It's incredible to listen to that line of reasoning. It's just not something I can get my brain around. My whole life and my whole career has been about feeding people, and I think everybody wants to be fed. And indeed, everybody does, but it just seems that the elitists don't share that. They don't feel a connection to every man.
They don't feel a connection to every man, and that couldn't... See, I wanted to play that for you guys because I think he hits the nail on the head. He knows what's going on. How does this fourth-generation farmer who dedicates 12, 14 hours of his day to growing healthy food to feed people, how does he know these things? People are waking up. Now, the question is, what do we do about it? What do we do about it when, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to use this term again, Dave, Satanists, Luciferians. What kind of madmen would be doing nothing about Fukushima? What kind of madmen would be putting fluoride in the water to dumb down populations for decades? What kind of madmen would want to create GMO foods, right, that pollute our own biology, that pollute our own DNA? What kind of madmen would want to put poisons in vaccines to hurt children? The autism rate used to be 1 in 10,000, now it's like 1 in 60. Mm-hmm. What kind of madmen? Satanists, because they want to corrupt God's creation. They want to corrupt the beauty of this world. They want to destroy it. They are the destroyers of beauty and the destroyers of humanity. And how we fight against that, I don't know. And I know there's a lot of listeners that will say right now, just trust in God. This is all part of the plan. Well, that may be the case, but in the meantime, their plan is to kill us and our children, and we need to fight back. The question is, how do we do it? They're developing Skynet at this point. They want to have total control, right? Total tactical control over us from the skies, from space, and otherwise. And I'll tell you what, guys, that's why I wrote down at the beginning of this before Dave and I started talking about it. We are in the twilight of humanity, and I want to fight back. I just don't know how. How do we fight back at this point? I'm doing everything I can. What are we supposed to do, Dave? How do we fight back against this multifaceted satanic attack?
I mean, it's starting here. I mean, people listening, people waking up, getting the message out, and people objecting to what they're trying to do. I mean, at this point, we're at the beginning phases of it. There are a lot of people waking up right now, and I see more and more people waking up, people calling for, labeling on foods to understand what's in their foods, people waking up saying, you know something, I just don't agree with what the government is doing here. I don't agree with the laws. And what's going to happen, I think, is that people are going to have to band together. People are going to have to wake up, see what's happening, and band together. Yes, we've had a lot of people in California come out against the bill SB 277, which became law, but it's not enough. The rest of the country needs to come out and support each other against what is happening. But there are still people that are sleeping. There are still people that are not awake, and they are going along with it. And this is a problem. And as we know from everything else, the only way there is change is if we get everyone together and we expose what is happening. And I think with us talking about it, others talking about it, and retrieving the documentation, we're exposing what is happening and spreading the word out to more and more people.
Yeah, exposing the men behind the curtain, and
Yes.
it's because that is what we're doing, and that's what needs to be done, right? Jerry Brown's done it to himself, right? By being a fascist, tyrannical monster, by pushing through SB 277 and signing it, despite the people saying no, right? And so what do they use against the people? They use propaganda, and they use these divisive issues to divide us and keep us fighting against each other instead of all stepping back and looking at the real boogeymen. The boogeymen against humanity are the people that are the puppet masters. The people even above are corrupt politicians, right? They're going to give us Hillary and Jeb in 2016. And believe me, both of those families are very, very criminal and are up in the pyramid, but they are not at the top of the pyramid. And we need to step back and stop fighting against each other, right? That fourth generation farmer went on to say in that interview, very, very succinct, wonderful points. And because he's speaking from a place of passion. He loves people. He wants to grow good, healthy food. He wants to help people. He wants to save California. That's why at the beginning of that fight, he said, surely we're smart enough to figure out a way to come together and fix this. The problem is these evil people, these evil politicians, the corporations and the people above the corporations are standing right there in front of us against it. We can't come together because they're standing in front of us, between us, behind us, and they don't want us to come together. And he was saying in that interview, $500 desalinates an acre-foot of seawater. An acre-foot of seawater is a lot of fresh water, $500. He says 80% of Californians live within 50 miles of the ocean. For 1/4 of the cost of the high-speed train that they want to put out there for $68 billion, Dave, a stupid high-speed train, for 1/4 of that cost, they could solve their water problems to a large degree by producing a lot more fresh water with desalination plants. An acre-foot of fresh water costs about $40 a month for you and your family. He said, we don't need, this is his quote, we don't need to be treated like dogs, being thrown bones by these elitists. You fight over this because there's only this much, they'll tell you. And it's not true. End quote. It's artificial scarcity. It's Agenda 21. It is their plan. And divide and conquer. You know the playbook, Dave. It's divide and conquer. Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, drought. Reaction, better turn off the water. We better not allow you to water your car. We better, maybe you only get 10 gallons a day for drinking water for you and your family. A year later, 2 gallons, 1 gallon. Oh, you're done. You better be herded into a big centralized city where we'll give you water. This is the plan, divide and conquer.
But you notice when they're shutting off the water for the people, they keep the water on for the corporations.
Yeah, the fracking companies get all the water they want.
The bottling companies for like soda and the bottling companies for water, that was kept on.
Yeah, do you know that Nestle is sucking all the water out of Lake Michigan over here in my part of the country? They get carte blanche to suck out all the damn water they want, and then it shows up in Walmart at $5 for a 24-pack, and they're pulling it out damn near for free, and nobody's doing anything about it. Why? Because we have a revolving door of corporatism in this country. It's called fascism. Mussolini defined it. When the corporations and government are in bed together, it's the absolute definition of fascism, and these corporations run our government. And that's why nothing ever changes. That's why all of us are screaming at the top of our lungs for change, and it never comes.
Right, because these governments, they're not working for the people anymore. They're working for the elite, the bankers, the corporations. Nothing is being done for the people. They tell you that they're doing it for the people, but nothing's really ever done for the people whatsoever.
Yeah, and now the tyranny is absolutely overt, where it used to be covert, and if a bill didn't go through, well, then they'd rename the bill and bring it back 6 months later. Now it's completely overt. The Greek people don't want austerity? Too bad you're getting it anyway. The people of California don't want mandatory vaccines? Too bad you're getting it anyway. It's overt. The tyranny and the fascism is overt. And I guess we can wrap this conversation up. You probably got to go. I'm talking your ear off here, but I would say this. What really is amazing to me, Dave, is that most of my friends, neighbors, and colleagues are still not awake to this stuff, and they think everything is just fine because they're still employed, unlike the 45 million Americans on food stamps. The people that are employed, that get their news from CNN,